I think it's really important that everybody is recognised for the creativity that they potentially have within, and that we all have the capacity to tell a story, whether it be in a song or writing or speaking, and to be able to explore that and discover it. The first things that I ever went to was I was sent to libraries by English teachers to listen to performances of poetry, and to go to a thing in Launceston called the Poetry Cup. And I think to have Baha'i sponsored or created art things that we can share and discover the talents in our own community are really important, to give a space for expression of that, and just exploring it and connecting to other creative people as well. I think I walk away with a renewed sense that artists and writers can make a difference in the world, and it's not just what we create, it's the way we create it. I think the most exciting things are when you get a sense of unity of purpose, but a diversity of expression. So I find that really, really exciting to just, and I especially like seeing all ages mixing together to do that. And like, if we're around creative things, that encourages us, if we're around that from a young age right throughout our life, and to not see a separation amongst different age groups, but this connection through arts and creativity. So I love that. I love mixed spaces around shared passions and interests. I think if you have something creative inside of you, it's coming up with some sort of time of day or a ritual or something that you do regularly that is a space for reflection and creativity. I think I really enjoyed, if I'm allowed to talk about things that we did, I really enjoyed Grant Hinton Miller's workshop with us, where he created a space, he gave us a few rules to think about that make us more effective writers, about using concrete and specific imagery, and then people had 15 minutes to practice that, and I think everybody in the room was having a go and was getting something out of that, and realised we really do all have stories in us, but it's a matter of using our heart to get them onto the paper. And then that process of editing and developing, he started to give us tips which are familiar perhaps for me. I'm a creative writer, I go to a lot of these things, but if you've never done that before, it's a really non-threatening way to take those first steps, and to share that in small groups I think is an extremely effective way of building courage to share. And he encouraged us to give constructive feedback, that we were there to encourage each other. So whatever feedback we give, focus on the thing you most like in that story that you've just heard. And I think a lot of people walked away from that feeling really empowered. I found it really difficult to prepare my workshop for the festival, because I wanted to do something which was about the power of poetry, and really the spiritual power of poetry, and that every act of creation or work, like if you're a craftsman or an architect or a songwriter, the way that you do that can actually be like a prayer. It's like it's your expression of your spirituality through your work. And I just came across the most astounding quotations about the connection of poets to the divine. And there's some stories about Mullah Hussein and the Bab riding together outside of the fort of Maku, and he had a difficult time there where is it Ali Khan, but then Ali Khan kind of came to really recognise the spiritual significance of Bab, and he was effectively free and could go wherever he wanted. And he was looking at the beautiful surroundings of Mullah Hussein and starts to quote Hafiz the poet and talk about the tongue of the poets. There's treasures there within that, and the context of that is that poets can have spiritual insights that even they don't understand. So this is in the early days of the Dawn Breakers. You've got this conversation, they're writing and they're discussing poetry. And of course, as a poet, I get really excited about that and go, oh, look, the Barb loves poetry, and he is using the significance of that. And it's all throughout the writings that the power of poets, and that they can be in touch with the divine and use it like an act of worship. So yeah, I was very excited by that. I think that faith has influenced my work as a poet and an artist. First of all, I think it began with the process to always have a kind of reflective, spiritual, meditative process. But I was really inspired by reading the work of Roger White, Canadian poet. And I actually wrote a letter to him, and he sent me a signed copy of one of his books, which was a combination of fact and historical fiction. And it was really about taking the stories within any form of contemporary or older history and bringing it to life through poetry. And so I started to think, oh, it'd be good to write poems about Baha'is, like as these inspiring figures. And so I would write like a poem about Tara, and then I go, oh, I'd like to write one about Dizzy Gillespie, and I'd like to sort of have the jazz beat to honour him. And I can pick anyone, and he would pick ordinary, well, I say ordinary Baha'is, unknown Baha'is, and he would capture their history and their story in his work. And I love him because he liked humour as well. Like there was all sorts of stories that could be done. So I think that faith affects me because it keeps me going. We had one of the speakers at the festival talk about the fact that you write from a spiritual basis. So it's not for material gain. Of course you'd like to make a living out of it, but first and foremost, you want somebody to read or experience your work and I like them to walk away feeling more positive about the world and to feel that they can make a difference. And because I write for children and young adults now, I love the fact that the children's young adult writing community in particular seem to be extremely spiritually motivated. They're motivated to have the literacy of children, to have their reading, to have diversity. And I think, wow, they've got so much in common with Baha'i principles, and we've got these like-minded communities that we can connect with. Yeah, I think it's really important to recognize that spirituality and creativity doesn't limit us in the genre that we express it in. And so, like, if you like blues music or rock or jazz, that can be very spiritual music. My son had an experience where he'd been asked to play for a devotional, and he put all of his heart into this really popular jazz piece. It's actually played by a classical guitarist, and Paul Simon does a cover of it. And he was so proud of himself, and he just did it during this program, and someone came up afterwards and questioned his choice of music as not being appropriate to the occasion. And I just thought, this is not encouragement. Obviously that was his interpretation of what spirituality is, and I think we can't limit it. We have to understand that creative people will explore that. Yes, you can put some stipulations like don't do a picture of Baha'u'llah, but you can't tell someone about their style or their genre if they choose to write fiction or poetry or non-fiction, that one is more important than the other. This is a global religion, it's unity and diversity, and that applies just as much to creative expression as to culture. Like your culture could be, you're a beat poet and you like spoken word or you like bush ballads, and I think we have to nurture and celebrate that diversity, not suppress it. Yeah.